Have you ever had one of those moments where you put together a perfect plan, you've thought of everything, and it just completely fails? Well, today we're going to dive into a way of looking at the world that might just explain why that happens. It's called thinking in systems.
This quote from Robert Pirsig just nails it, doesn't it? We're always talking about the system. We blame it, we say we want to change it, but what if the real issue is we don't really get what it is we're even looking at?
I mean, come on, we've all been there. You roll out this brilliant new idea at work or maybe in your community, and then it either just fizzles out and everything snaps back to normal, or, even worse, a bunch of new problems pop up that you never saw coming. It is so frustrating. But here's the thing. It's usually not because of bad luck or bad ideas. It's because we're failing to see the whole picture.
So, how do we start seeing that whole picture? Well, it all starts with understanding a huge mistake we make in how we look at problems. And there's a fantastic old story that just illustrates this perfectly.
The story is about a group of men who are blind, and they're brought to meet an elephant. Now, none of them has ever come across an elephant before, so the only way they can figure out what this thing is by touching it, one piece at a time.
So each man, based on his very limited first-hand experience, comes to a totally different conclusion. The guy who feels the thick, sturdy leg, he's absolutely convinced it's a pillar. The one who gets a hold of the long, flexible trunk, for him, it's definitely a pipe. And the man who feels the big, flat ear, he's certain he's holding a rug.
And here is the big lesson. In their own little piece of reality, each one of them was right. But about the actual elephant, they were all completely wrong. They were so focused on the parts they could feel that they missed the whole thing. And you know what? That is exactly how we often try to solve our most complex problems, by looking at a bunch of disconnected parts instead of the whole interconnected system.
Okay, so focusing on the individual parts is the problem. What's the answer? Well, the answer is to learn how to see the system itself. And to do that, we first need to know what its basic building blocks are.
This is the classic definition from the pioneer of systems thinking, Donella Meadows. And the key word here isn't the things. It's not the people or the cells. The real magic, the thing that makes a system behave the way it does, is the interconnections that tie all those elements together.
So every single system has these three parts. Think of it like an iceberg. What we usually see, the part above the water, are the elements, the people, the buildings, the obvious stuff. But the real power, the bulk of the iceberg, is hidden below the surface. That's the interconnections, the rules, the delays, the lines of communication, and the system's true purpose. And here's a pro tip. You figure out a system's purpose by watching what it does, not by listening to what people say it does.
Okay, let's get a little more specific. The foundation of any system is something called a stock. A stock is really just a pile of something. It can be water in a tub, money in your bank account, the population of a city. It could even be something intangible, like your level of trust in a relationship. Stocks are basically the system's memory of what's happened so far.
And of course, stocks don't just sit there. They are always changing, and they're changed by flows. The bathtub analogy is the easiest way to get this. The water coming in from the faucet is your inflow. It makes the stock of water go up. The water going down the drain is your outflow. It makes the stock go down. Simple, right? Every system is just a collection of stocks being filled and drained by flows.
All right, now we get to the really cool part. What makes a system more than just a passive bathtub? What gives it a life of its own with behaviors that can totally surprise us? Well, it's the engine that drives all that change. And this, right here, is the secret sauce, the feedback loop.
A feedback loop is what happens when the amount of something in a stock starts to influence its own inflows or outflows. So if the water in the tub gets too high and you reach over and turn the faucet down, that's a feedback loop. The stock, the water level, is now controlling the flow. The system is literally starting to control itself.
And there are really only two kinds of these loops. First, you've got reinforcing loops. These are the amplifiers. They create exponential change, like a snowball rolling downhill getting bigger and bigger. Think of a viral video or a financial panic. Then you have balancing loops. These are the stabilizers. They're goal-seeking, kind of like the thermostat in your house that works to keep the temperature just right. Every single complex system you see is just an intricate dance between these two types of loops.
So with this new way of seeing, we can start to spot some of the common problems or traps that systems fall into. These are the very traps that cause our brilliant solutions to backfire.
One of the most famous traps is called the tragedy of the commons. This happens when you've got some kind of shared, limited resource, like a public park or a fish population. Every individual person has an incentive to use as much of that resource as they can for their own personal gain. The feedback telling them, this is good for me, is super strong and immediate. But the feedback about the declining health of the whole resource is weak or delayed or maybe even non-existent.
And this is not some abstract historical problem. I mean, look around. This pattern is everywhere. Every fishing boat wants to get the biggest catch it can, but altogether they end up destroying the fishery. Every driver wants to take the fastest route home, but altogether they create total gridlock. The structure of the system is the same. Individually, rational choices lead to a collective disaster.
Okay, this might sound a little bit grim, but here's where systems thinking gets really powerful and honestly really hopeful. Once you can diagnose the problem, you can start looking for the best places to fix it.
And these places are called leverage points. Think of them like the acupressure points of a system. It's a spot where a small, well-placed push can send ripples of change through the entire structure. The whole game is about finding where to push. And what's so wild about this is how it completely flips our usual problem-solving approach on its head. As you can see here, we spend almost all of our time and energy arguing about the things with the least leverage, the parameters. We tweak tax rates, we adjust budgets, we change a standard here or there. But according to Meadows, that's the absolute weakest place to intervene. What's way more powerful? Changing the goal of the entire system. And the most powerful leverage point of all? Changing the paradigm, the whole mindset, the deep-seated beliefs that the system was built on in the first place.
And all of this leads to the final and maybe the most important lesson in systems thinking. It's about a fundamental shift in our attitude, moving away from control and towards collaboration.
I absolutely love this quote. It suggests that after you've done the work, you've observed the system, you understand its rules, you see the leverage points, the ultimate skill isn't about forcing it to do what you want. It's about learning its rhythm, respecting its complexity, and moving with it, gracefully.
So if there's one thing to take away, it's this. Thinking in systems isn't about becoming a master puppeteer who controls the world. It's about becoming a better observer who understands it. It gives you a new pair of glasses to see the hidden structures shaping our lives. And that leaves us with a really powerful question to think about. In your own world, your job, your family, your community, what's one system you've been fighting against? And what might it look like to stop pushing and start dancing with it instead?